Welcome to Michiana Main Lines. This was shot in 1990, July. That is Werwinski Street. We are on College. The South Bend Conrail Local is heading north to the Notre Dame St. Mary's campuses to collect empty coal cars. This is south of Lincoln Way West, or Lincoln Way Highway as some know it. Approaching Lincoln Way. This is north of Lincoln Way between Wilbur Street and Vassar Street at the Holy Cross Church School campus. Again heading north. They will raise quite a stir here in the neighborhood as they come through. They don't use the horn much today, just a bell, and no caboose. Traveling light, probably because this is only a pickup. Vassar Street. That switch is what led into the old Drury's Brewery complex. That was still operated, I believe, into the 70s. I recall Penn Central going in there when I was a student at Holy Cross School. Other small businesses were in that complex in the early 80s, including Martin's Supermarket and Chemlon. They were takers of freight by boxcar. There was a pretty big fire there in the early 80s, and that pretty much ended any freight deliveries, as I recall. That is Portage Avenue overpass there in the distance, and then they will be approaching Riverside Drive and Angela Trestle. We'll get to see them crossing Angela Trestle in part 2 of this video, if there is any demand to do it. Angela Trestle, of course, being a rather problem trestle with incidents over the decades involving people and trains, unfortunately. This line is all gone now, having been removed in the mid-2010s. Plans are for this to become a bike trail called the Coal Line Trail. Now we have arrived at the Notre Dame St. Mary's campus. St. Mary's is to the right, Notre Dame is to the left across 31. This is the old Michigan Central line now that ran between Niles and South Bend. This line actually went down into South Bend, down Niles Avenue at one point. Too bad they didn't bring any coal up with them today. They probably then would have had the caboose. Usually they use the transfer type caboose. This line once ran straight ahead up to Niles, Michigan. That now is mostly bike trail. At this time, I don't believe it was used any farther north of here. They are now entering St.Mary's switch, which will loop around and go into the St.Mary's power plant area. St.Mary's had their own small switch engine. I'm not sure what happened to the engine, but I'm sure somebody out there knows. It's probably purchased by somebody or possibly a museum. That's the toll road exit entrance ramp overpass. That now is at ground level, because the track is gone. There was no need to even have a bridge anymore. Hotels are on either side of where this track crossed the Douglas Road area right here. So this area has changed tremendously over the years. They stopped bringing coal up here sometime in the 90s, I would say, and that was because Notre Dame began transloading their coal from a site on South Olive Street, and then they were trucking it up to the university. A gentleman with deep pockets tried to purchase this line in the mid-2000s, but was met with very strong opposition from the city of South Bend. Here we have a look at the road bed and track. Pretty much just cinder. I don't ever recall any major rehabs on this line in the 80s and 90s. Notre Dame power plant. Water tower, smokestacks. Busy US 31. The city attempted to adversely abandon this line in the mid-2000s. That is basically where a railroad is abandoned, even if the railroad doesn't want to necessarily abandon it. But the city was unsuccessful because they weren't able to prove a real need to have it abandoned. They did try a second time, though, in I believe the early 2010s. That time they were successful. The person that previously wanted to purchase the line was no longer interested. Again, no business. Notre Dame transloading, and plus they were in the process of switching over to gas and going away from coal due to federal regulations and such. So the city was successful, and then the line was totally removed shortly thereafter. If you're interested, you can read a lot of the documentation on those abandonment attempts over at the Surface Transportation Board archives. Some very humorous things in there as far as reasons that the line should not have been reopened. Some were very funny given that this line was in operation for such a long period of time back in the day when there were a lot more trains and a lot more neighborhoods that the line went through, but for some reason it wasn't wanted to be reactivated this time. Now they are returning with the empty coal cars. They will pull south of the Notre Dame switch and then back across 31 to couple on to the empty Notre Dames, which are sitting right alongside Douglas Road. That is where the interchange point was. I apologize for the jerkiness of this video. Back in '90, this was a first-time shoot with a damn new camcorder, a VHS huge camcorder. This is my first YouTube attempt. If you like this, be sure and like, subscribe. If you would like to see more, let me know. I plan on doing a part 2 which will show the pulling out of the cars from Notre Dame and the return to South Bend, including passage over Angela Trestle and the St. Joe River. Again, thanks for watching. I'll show just a little bit of a teaser sneak preview here of the Notre Dame collection as they back towards Notre Dame.